Hi, welcome to the latest installment of Outlaw Bookseller. Today I'm just going to make it a brief one and talk over a few recent acquisitions, some books that I've acquired quite recently, which I hope to read soon. Some of them, of course, will just go on the to-read pile, as these things do. And first of all, I'd like to talk about Judith Merril. So Judith Merril, this is the best of Judith Merril, a Warner paperback from 1976, which I acquired from Fine Edition Books in Greenhithe. Thanks to Mike there. Great stuff as always, lovely condition book, quite a rare item. And this is her best short stories. Well, who was Judith Merril? Judith Merril was an important early female figure to emerge from the world of genre SF, from the world of the magazines, before there were books labelled science fiction. And Judith was married to Frederick Pohl at one point, and she came up in the 40s and started writing. And her most famous book is probably this wonderful, wonderful novel, Shadow on the Hearth, which is quite hard to get in any condition. This one is in a bit of a state. But there have been a few on eBay recently, funnily enough, not too expensive. And this edition comes from 1966. This is published by Compact Books. And the cover design, funnily enough, is by Keith Roberts. So it first appeared, I believe, in about 1953. Let me just check the date. This is one I was after for quite some time. First published 51 by Doubleday, and then in 1953 by Sidgwick. You can pick the Sidgwick ones up, the UK ones up here and there. And this was the first paperback in the UK, and it's a book which is in all the reference books, and it's rather important because it is an example of a woman's point of view from the end of the golden age of SF and at the beginning of the 50s, when SF really took on new levels of sophistication, wit, and social commentary. In the 50s, of course, we tend to hear a lot about two magazines, Galaxy and the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, which is only right because they came up with some great stuff. Judith Merril's Shadow on the Hearth is really important when you think about what was happening at the time, because that was the Cold War. And this is a sober and quite harrowing account of a housewife dealing with the impact of nuclear war in upstate New York. And it's written entirely from her point of view. It's not first-person narrative. It's done very deftly, very well. It's not a super literary novel, but it's not a super populist one either. So it falls between those stools. It's serious but entertaining, very gripping, and a really great look at the reality of what a nuclear strike would have been like at that time. And if you can pick it up, do. I really urge you to do so. And it's living proof that she, amongst others, people like Catherine MacLean, Zena Henderson, C.L. Moore, Lee Brackett were all working then. And it pretty much shows that the female perspective, or even the feminist perspective, if you want, or the proto-feminist perspective, wasn't missing from SF at the time. She was deeply involved with fandom and with the genre. She edited lots of anthologies. In the 60s, she produced the famous anthology, which in the States is called England Swings SF, which is a dreadful title. In the UK, it's called the Space Time Journal, a really important new wave SF anthology. So if you can pick this up, do. It's really good. It's a lot more serious and realistic than some of the other SF at the time by male writers. So well worth having a look at. She was really ahead of the game. So as I say, I'm looking forward to reading her short stories, and I don't think there's anything in print by her, which is a great shame, but hopefully at some point Goulart and Masterworks might get their act together and pull something together, because she really is quite special and important. So what else have I been getting into? Well, and somebody I've neglected, I feel, is Clifford D. Simak, one of the key figures of the late Golden Age and early 50s. A writer who's often compared to Ray Bradbury because of his pastoral style. This is a very scarce book called The Marathon Photograph and Other Stories. I think this is the only edition there's ever been. Again, I got this from Mike at Fine Edition. Mike actually gave me a copy of this, which is really kind of him. We were chatting online about SF, as we often do. And I think he's got other copies if you want to buy one. I think they're quite cheap. Absolutely beautiful as new. This was issued in the late 80s by Seven House, most of whose books went to libraries. I've got loads and loads of them. I love Seven House books. Really pretty little octavo hardbacks. You really can't go wrong. And this has got, I think, about 5 stories in it. And I'm looking forward to reading this. And I'm going to read it over the next few days because I've really neglected Simak. I've read 2 of his novels. It's nowhere near enough. He's an important figure. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. And at some point, I'll do a video just about Seven House. Fantastic stuff. Finally, another book which I got very recently is by an author who in a way is an old favourite of mine, even though I've only read one book by him, and that's Michael Kurland, and this is Cyhunt in Berkeley, and this came out, I think, in, let's take a look, 1980. I believe this is no, it is a 1980 edition. Rather beautiful again. I got this from All You Need Is Books, aka Zardos, who you will find again online. Marvelous bookseller, really good price. It cost me less than £5. Beautiful condition, unbroken spine. Who is Michael Kurland, I ask you? Say, well, Michael Kurland, what I've read of him, or what I know of him, which is comparatively little, is that he's a bit like Philip Jose Farmer, straight ahead sort of adventure writer, but with some wacky ideas. And way back in, I think it was 1979, in Cardiff, I went into Blackwell's Remainder bookshop, which they had just off the Hayes there, and I bought a book called The Infernal Device, which is, there are many books, of course, The Infernal Device, there's at least half a dozen, and it's a book about Professor Moriarty, and in it, Moriarty is the hero, and Holmes is the bumbling fool, and Moriarty narrates the book, and he is trying to prevent anarchist attacks on Queen Victoria using bombs and submersibles and things like that. It's a great book, and it's got this great blurb on it about dastardly intrigue and international villainy, which always tickled my sort of my sense of humour, which I guess tells you everything really. And I've never got around to reading any of his SF, so I thought it's about time I remedied that. If you're interested in his Moriarty books, several of them, I think there's about 6 of them, they got reissued a few years ago, I think by Titan, and they didn't make much of a splash, but they're really good fun. So if you like Sherlock Holmes and you'd like to see the Holmes myth turned upside down, then check them out. So I've got this to read, Cyhunt, and it's quite interesting because it sounds like a cross between Ubik by Philip K. Dick. So it's about sonic powers and a bit of terrorism thrown. It's just kind of like a sort of a Ubik 9/11, a bit scary, really. So those are the things which I've acquired very recently that I'm looking forward to reading. Also on my to-read pile, I'm definitely in a very much an A format mode at the moment. I picked up Star Rider by Doris Piserchia, which was published in the 80s by Women's Press over here. Doris turned something like 92 recently. I've never read any of her work. I was inspired to pick it up after watching Scott Bradfield's channel on YouTube, and I've been rereading Scott's work, and it's fantastic. And he did a video about her, and we all seem to be talking about it. I was talking to Tom Toner, the local science fiction writer where I live, about her. So it just seemed the right time to have a go at her stuff. Also on that mark, I've looked again at some of the writers who used to have books published by Women's Press in the UK in the 80s, some of which I read at the time, some I neglected. Somebody I didn't read at the time was Suzanne Hayden Elgin, who's a linguist. If you look her up, she has lots of books about how to deal with people through linguistics. She's dead now, sadly. And this is a trilogy, or possibly even a tetralogy of novellas called The Communipath Wolves. And it's just got this wild cover, and I'm looking forward to that, because the most famous book was A Native Tongue, which is about linguistics, and that looks like great fun, so I'm going to give that a go soon. Finally, my most recent acquisition that I'm looking at getting forward to getting into, a nice thin door paperback here, is The Tin Angel by Ron Goulart, which has a little dog doing a song and dance routine on the cover. And I do love dogs, and I'm a bit of a sucker for dogs that can do song and dance routines on the covers of SF novels. Ron Goulart is often described as the Groucho Marx of SF, so I have read him. This is a door paperback original from the 70s, and the dog is called Bowser, so possibly he won't be as engaging as Blood from Harlan Ellison's A Boy and His Dog, but we'll see. And if I enjoy this, I am going to try and pick up a hardcover of it, because there's a nice hardcover omnibus which includes this and another book called Flux. So I'll try and pick that up if I enjoy this. Those are my recent acquisitions. I hope you're enjoying your SF reading. Remember, the past is more important, as Orwell said, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.